The year is 2020. A virus grips the globe. In the heart of this turmoil, a figure emerges, promising hope, promising change. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. steps onto the world stage, not as a leader, but as a savior. His words drip with empathy, his eyes well with concern. He offers a steady hand, a beacon of light in the darkness. But behind this carefully crafted facade, a different story unfolds. This is the story of how Joe Biden, the man who promised unity, instead sowed division, how the man who pledged transparency instead embraced secrecy. Throughout history, the siren song of power has lured many to its embrace. Joe Biden, whether by design or by instinct, has mastered this dark art. He understood the power of fear in a time of pandemic, using it to justify unprecedented spending, to silence dissent, to reshape society in his image. He preyed on economic anxieties, offering false promises of prosperity, while ushering in policies that benefited the few at the expense of the many. With each carefully calculated move, the trap tightened, and the American people found themselves ensnared in a carefully orchestrated illusion. This is not a story about Joe Biden, the man. This is about Joe Biden, the symbol, the embodiment of a system that has long since abandoned its principles. A system where power trumps truth, where narratives are manufactured, and where the will of the people is nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. In the chapters that follow, we will pull back the curtain, exposing the strings that are being pulled. We will dissect the tactics, expose the lies, and shine a light on the darkness that has enveloped the American political landscape. But it is a journey we must take if we are to reclaim our democracy, restore our freedoms, and hold those in power accountable. As the world watched in horror, a novel coronavirus spread like wildfire. Fear, a primal instinct, gripped the hearts of millions. It was in this crucible of uncertainty that Joe Biden saw his opportunity. Lockdowns descended upon the land, shuttering businesses, isolating families, and turning bustling cities into ghost towns. The economy, once a symbol of American strength, teetered on the brink. The American people, desperate for answers, looked to their leaders for guidance. And Joe Biden, with his calming demeanor and promises of salvation, was ready with an answer. America, a nation founded on ideals of equality and justice, has long wrestled with the demons of its past. Joe Biden, a seasoned politician, recognized the power of this division. He spoke of systemic racism, of institutional bias, of the need to dismantle the structures of oppression. But behind the rhetoric of unity and reconciliation lay a more cynical agenda. Biden and his allies understood that by stoking the flames of division, they could further their own political ambitions. The American dream has always been intertwined with the concept of economic freedom. But under the Biden administration, this fundamental pillar of American society has come under attack. In the name of compassion, Biden has unleashed a torrent of government spending, expanding the welfare state to unprecedented levels. Inflation has soared, eroding the value of hard-earned savings. Businesses, burdened by regulations and mandates, struggle to survive. The middle class, the backbone of the nation, finds itself squeezed from all sides. They speak of a new social contract, but in reality they are forging a new set of chains of economic dependence. The whispers began as mere rumors, circulating in the darkest corners of the internet. Hunter Biden, the troubled son of the now president, was said to be involved in shady dealings. The evidence, once hidden from public view, began to surface. The story that unfolded was one of influence peddling, of access bought and sold. At the center of this web of intrigue stood Joe Biden, the protector, the enabler. Instead of demanding accountability, Joe Biden used the power of the presidency to shield his son from scrutiny. The Department of Justice has become a mere tool to be wielded against political opponents. Under the guise of upholding the law, They have embarked on a campaign of selective prosecution. The January 6th Capitol riot has been exploited as a pretext to silence dissent. Ordinary citizens have been demonized as insurrectionists, their lives upended by a relentless legal assault. Meanwhile, those who engaged in violence during the summer of 2020 have been granted impunity. The message is clear. If you challenge the authority of the Biden administration, you will face the full force of the law. The southern border has been transformed into a humanitarian crisis. Under the cover of darkness, millions have crossed illegally, overwhelming border communities. The Biden administration has chosen to downplay the severity of the crisis. The Border Patrol has been hamstrung, prevented from carrying out their duties. The cartels have tightened their grip on the border, trafficking drugs, weapons, and human beings with impunity. The border has become a microcosm of the Biden administration's failed policies. The air grows thick with a silent thief, a creeping, insidious force that devours the value of hard-earned wages. Its name is inflation, and under the Biden administration, it has become a constant companion. The American people feel the sting of inflation with each passing day. They see the price of essentials skyrocketing, their hard-earned dollars buying less and less. But instead of acknowledging this harsh reality, the Biden administration has chosen a path of denial and deception. They speak of transitory fluctuations, but the truth is that their own policies have unleashed an inflationary spiral. In an age of instant information, control over the media has become paramount. The Biden administration has cultivated a symbiotic relationship with a compliant media establishment. Gone are the days of a robust and independent press. The result is a carefully constructed echo chamber, where the Biden administration's version of events is presented as the gospel truth. Through coordinated messaging campaigns, the Biden administration has bent the media to their will. The Biden administration has become a master of illusion, conjuring up mirages of economic prosperity. They tout their policies as the engine of growth, their spending as an investment in the future. But behind this facade of economic recovery lies a far more troubling reality. The jobs being created are often low-paying, offering little in the way of security or opportunity for advancement. The stock market has become detached from the real economy, its gains enjoyed by a select few. The so-called economic recovery is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Section 1. The Debt Deception, Promising Forgiveness while Shackling Future Generations. The burden of student loan debt became a potent symbol of economic inequality, a rallying cry for those seeking to address the imbalances of a system rigged against the young and the aspiring. Joe Biden recognized the power of this issue, the opportunity it presented to curry favor with a key demographic. He promised forgiveness, a clean slate, a chance to break free from the shackles of debt. His words resonated with those struggling to make ends meet, their dreams deferred, their futures mortgaged to an unforgiving system. He painted himself as the champion of the downtrodden, the defender of the little guy. But like so many of Biden's promises, this one too was shrouded in deception, a cynical ploy to buy votes. The truth is that Biden knew, or should have known, that his sweeping student loan forgiveness plan was on shaky legal ground. He chose to ignore the warnings, to disregard the advice of legal experts, to prioritize political expediency over sound policy. He was willing to make promises he couldn't keep, to raise hopes he had no intention of fulfilling. The consequences of his actions will be felt for generations to come, as the burden of this reckless spending spree is passed down to future generations. Section 2. The Imperial Presidency, Ruling by Decree, Bypassing the Will of the People. The Founding Fathers, wary of the dangers of unchecked executive power, designed a system of government carefully balanced between three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. This separation of powers, enshrined in the Constitution, was intended to prevent tyranny, to ensure that no one person or entity could accumulate too much power. But under the Biden administration, this delicate balance has been thrown into disarray. The executive branch, emboldened by a sense of its own righteousness and fueled by a partisan agenda, has increasingly sought to bypass the legislative process, to rule by decree, to impose its will on the American people without the consent of their elected representatives. Executive orders, once a rarely used tool reserved for extraordinary circumstances, have become the weapon of choice for a president eager to circumvent the will of Congress, to implement policies that lack the support of the American people. With the stroke of a pen, Biden has enacted sweeping changes to immigration law, energy policy, environmental regulations, and more, all without the scrutiny or accountability of the legislative process. This imperial presidency, unchecked by the constraints of a co-equal branch of government, poses a grave threat to the very foundations of American democracy. It undermines the rule of law, erodes public trust, and sets a dangerous precedent for future administrations, regardless of their political persuasion. It is a path that leads not to progress, but to tyranny. Section 3. The art of the leak controlling the narrative, one drip at a time. Information is power, and in the world of Washington, D.C., where perception often trumps reality, the ability to control the flow of information is paramount. The Biden administration, understanding this dynamic all too well, has mastered the art of the leak, using carefully timed disclosures to shape the narrative, to deflect criticism, and to advance their agenda. Leaks, often presented as acts of courageous whistleblowing, can be powerful tools for manipulating public opinion. They allow the administration to anonymously float trial balloons, to gauge public reaction to controversial policies, to discredit their opponents, and to bolster their own image. A well-timed leak can dominate the news cycle, drowning out negative coverage, shifting the focus away from scandals, and creating a sense of momentum for the administration's agenda. It can also sow discord among political opponents, forcing them to respond to a constantly shifting narrative, keeping them off balance and on the defensive. The Biden administration has used this tactic to great effect, leaking information to friendly reporters, planting stories that paint them in a favorable light, and discrediting their critics with carefully chosen disclosures. The result is a media landscape often more concerned with chasing the latest leak than with engaging in in-depth reporting, holding those in power accountable, or providing the public with the information they need to make informed decisions. Section 1. The Curtain Falls, a Legacy of Deception. As the final act of the Biden administration draws to a close, the weight of their deceptions hangs heavy in the air. The promises made, so often with feigned sincerity, lie shattered on the stage, exposed for the empty rhetoric they always were. The American people, once willing to suspend their disbelief, to give the benefit of the doubt, are left to confront the bitter truth. They have been conned. The curtain falls on a nation divided, its economy teetering on the brink, its institutions tarnished, its trust in government shattered. The legacy of Joe Biden, once envisioned as a return to normalcy, to competence, to decency, is now forever stained by the reality of his actions. The virus of fear, once exploited for political gain, continues to mutate, infecting the body politic with suspicion, distrust, and a deep sense of unease. The racial divisions, deliberately inflamed for partisan advantage, have left deep scars on the social fabric, a constant reminder of the fragility of unity in a nation perpetually teetering on the edge of division. The economy, once a source of pride, now limps along, burdened by debt, inflation, and a crisis of confidence. The American dream, that enduring symbol of opportunity and upward mobility, seems increasingly out of reach for millions, replaced by a sense of resignation, a belief that the system is rigged against them, that their voices no longer matter. Alex. So, whether it's pardoning Fauci, reshaping policies on infrastructure and climate, or protecting public servants, Biden's presidency has been full of unprecedented actions. Jamie, it really has. But there's another layer to all of this. Biden himself. Was he ever really sick? Or was he just playing the part of the old man, slow, sad, and frail, while actually being the big guy behind the scenes, Alex? That's an interesting question. I mean, we've seen those videos of him jogging across the White House lawn or running up to podiums during campaign events. It's hard to reconcile that with the image of someone who's supposedly frail. Jamie. Exactly. Those moments show a more energetic side of Biden that doesn't always match the public narrative. It raises questions about whether his old man persona is a deliberate strategy to lower expectations or deflect criticism. Alex. And if he really is the big guy, as some have suggested in political scandals, it would make sense for him to play weak while wielding power behind the scenes. Jamie. It's a fascinating balancing act. Whether it's perception or reality, Biden has managed to keep people guessing about his health and his role as a leader. Alex. So, in a way, every move, whether it's pardoning Fauci or jogging across the lawn, feels calculated to send a message. Jamie. Absolutely. In Washington, appearances are everything. And Biden seems to understand that better than most. Alex. Thanks for breaking all this down. It really puts things into perspective. There's always more going on than meets the eye. Jamie. That's politics for you. The line between what's real and what's staged is often razor thin. Fade out. Section 2, An Uncertain Encore, The Future of American Democracy. As the lights dim and the audience files out, a single question lingers in the air. What now? Can America recover from this sustained assault on its institutions, its values, its very soul? The wounds inflicted by the Biden administration are deep. Can they ever fully mend? The answer remains elusive. The forces unleashed by the Biden presidency will not simply vanish with a change of administration. They have taken root in a society already fractured. The future of American democracy hinges on the willingness of its citizens to confront these uncomfortable truths, to reclaim civic engagement, critical thinking, and a healthy skepticism of those in power. It demands a rejection of the politics of division, of the allure of easy answers and empty promises, of the seductive lies whispered by those who seek to exploit our fears for their own gain. The path forward will be fraught with challenges, with setbacks, with the constant temptation to succumb to cynicism and despair. But the stakes are too high, the consequences of inaction too dire, to allow apathy or resignation to prevail. The time has come to demand better, to hold our leaders accountable, to reclaim the promise of a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The fate of the nation, and indeed the future of democracy itself, hangs in the balance.